just like kindergartners. Good job. Thank you guys so much. You guys look so good out there. My name is Corey Jo Biddle. I'm the Executive Director of Fuel Milwaukee. And on behalf of Fuel and the MMAC, our parent company and partner for tonight's event, I want to thank you all so much for being here. Before we proceed with the evening, I want to thank our sponsors and partners that made this amazing night possible. BMO Harris Bradley Center, thank you so much for giving us exclusive access to your space. It built a lot of excitement for tonight's discussion, and it's really helping us to set the tone for our excitement about Milwaukee in our present and what our future could look like. Equally exciting is free pizza, which we all just enjoyed out in the Courtside Club. Thank you so much to Palermo's. We all are going to get a nice gift bag before we head out, and I'll make reference to what's going to be in the bag. But as supplies last, you guys will get a free coupon for Palermo's Pizza, the best pizza in the world. I'm not just saying that because they gave me a coupon. It really is. It's good. It's good. Also, I want to thank the Bucks. We knew we were going to be in this space. Obviously, we're talking about a new entertainment and sports arena, so we thought it might be cool to look at the locker rooms, and they gave us permission. And not only that, Peter Fagan, the president, is actually here. I'm going to call Peter up so he doesn't know I'm going to do this. I'm putting him on the spot completely. No, not really. Come on up and greet the crowd, Peter. Thank you so much for being here.
So, welcome. I'm only here because I don't want to leave till Thursday night because we're like beyond excited. I want everybody to reach under their seats for their 15-16 season ticket invoices. I'll be in the back. I'll just wait for you to sign them and fill them out. It'll be great. Welcome to the family. It's great to have you. Thank you very much for coming. Listen, all advocacy and all support for this entertainment and sports district is crucial to us and to the community and to this city and to this region and to this state. It's vitally important to the future of the Bucks, of which I'm a part of. And we're very excited to get groups together like this to really talk about how do we organize and how do we really expand on the initial vision, which we think is going to be fantastic, and we're very excited. I just came to say hi. I came to say, get ready. I wanted to schedule this for the second round, Game 5, but these guys wanted to do it for the first round, Game 5, so maybe we'll do it again in 2 weeks so we can do it to the second round. So, guys, come here, flick on your TVs. Go Bucks! Thursday.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, one more organization actually for us to thank is Play It Forward, and as you'll see, Corey Nettles is my model for today. Many of you have the Play It Forward t-shirt. This is the second version of the t-shirt. All of you are going to be receiving that t-shirt. Play It Forward is actually a coalition of organizations and individuals who have just really been, probably for the last 4 or 5 months, doing a great job of getting Milwaukeeans really informed and engaged with news and information and really excitement around the potential of not only the new arena, but now the district that we're here to talk about tonight. So where your name tags were, your bags with the t-shirts and pizzas will be when you exit, okay? So let's give a hand to Play It Forward for those t-shirts. Okay, so we all know the subject matter is this amazing proposal that we've all heard about, with the arena as a centerpiece, new housing, tons of shops, just loads of potential. Fuel, which is a community engagement organization for young professionals and new Milwaukeeans, had a small kind of gathering and conversation about this, and one of the members in that conversation said, there's so many smart people who have an opinion about this. I would love to hear what they think. So that's where the idea for this event came from. I went to the MMAC and said, who are the smartest people in Milwaukee? And they said...
They said none of those people were available? We have some other people?
They were all available, and they're all here. Chief among them is Jeff Sherman, co-founder of allmilwaukee.com and friend of Fuel. He is actually one of the founding members of Fuel, and we lovingly refer to him as the original young professional.
Thank you.
He's amazing. So I'm going to move out of the way, give him the floor. He'll introduce you to the panelists and take us through our discussion, and then we'll go from there. Does that sound good? All right. Thanks, Jack.
All right, very good, very good. All right, we're going to have a fun night. I'm going to kind of keep it free-flowing and have some fun, ask some questions. But I first want to just give a little context to the discussion. April 9th, 1960, if you read the New Yorker magazine, they said this about Milwaukee. No new office building has been put up in downtown Milwaukee in more than 20 years. And the skyline, if approached by Lake Michigan, gives the impression of a city that has taken a picture of itself around 1920 and liked the results so much that it decided just to leave matters alone. Obviously, we haven't left matters alone in this town, and if you look at downtown Milwaukee in the last 10 to 15 years, development has exploded. And let's remember that really sports haven't come into this community really into the late 1960s. What the Braves left in like 1965, the Bucks got here in 1968, had a kind of bad first season, but the second season, obviously, they won the NBA championship. So to continue moving Milwaukee forward, both on and off the court, this project's incredibly important. And as I say, that a city is only as good as the stories it tells, but to tell great stories, you need amazing people. And we do have 5 amazing people behind me. And to kind of kick it off and to provide even more context into the full development, to show the renderings and really give you a kind of a global walkthrough is Greg Ewan from Epstein Ewan Architects. Greg?
Okay. A global overview in 5 to 7 minutes, he said, so we'll make that happen. So thanks for having me tonight. Appreciate that. I first want to make a call out to another of the design team members that's here, Ashley Booth from HNTB. They are a local partner of ours on this, and Populous out of Kansas City is also our national partner on the design side. So what we thought we would do is just take a few moments and give you a bit of perspective. So as we talk this through in the panel discussion, you'll be able to refer back to some of what I'm going to tell you in the next five or 6 minutes. So if we can get the first graphic up there. So this is clearly a Google Earth shot of the area, and at the bottom of the image would be State Street, and at the top of the image would be McKinley Avenue. The river, of course, is off to your right, and it goes 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th streets along right to left. So that gives you the idea. Of course, you can see where the Bradley Center is in that graphic. What I'd like to do is show you the next slide, and this really begins to put in perspective at least the land that is potentially in play here. There's actually additional land, but in the immediate near future, this much land could be developed in and around the arena. And so looking at the State Street blocks, the arena, as you know, will be located north of the current Bradley Center, which is centered, of course, in this graphic. But this represents about 25 acres of land, not including the public right-of-way and the public streets. So 25 acres of developable land, that's really quite an opportunity. But it's also quite a responsibility. It hasn't been developed, obviously. Of course, the Bradley Center is there, but there's a lot of vacant property there. In fact, I don't know who here might live at the brewery development. I'm not sure if we have any residents here. But just as an example, today you can walk from the brewery to Mader's, and you don't see a person. You don't see an activated storefront. You don't see a human being. And that's really what, for me, and again, this is about opinions today. This isn't a scripted thing. But for me, this development, the area around the arena, is more about making and continuing to connect some very vibrant neighborhoods that have been in play for the last couple decades. This isn't going to happen overnight, but the best cities are those that are walkable. And this is going to help us fill some voids and make our city walkable. Jeff Speck, urban planner from New York, wrote a book, Walkable Cities, very good read. So going into this, you've seen the renderings. The other thing that I would want to say, and you can go to the first rendering, So we've all seen this rendering, but if I want you to squint at this rendering and view it as basically this opportunity in the center then to connect and radiate out in all directions, and be able to do that in a way that makes this a vibrant place. In fact, I do want to take 1 second, and the title of tonight's talk, I want to pick on it just for a second, because I believe it's something, who can read the title? The title is, exploring the economic opportunities of Milwaukee's new sports and entertainment district. The one thing I want to pick on there is that this cannot be viewed only as a sports and entertainment district. If we are there, we have issues. This is to be viewed, it should be viewed in my opinion, as an urban neighborhood that happens to have sports and entertainment in it, among other things. People have to want to be here. They have to want to live here. They have to want to work here. That's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen purely by the Bucks owners. Aren't going to make that happen. It's going to happen over time. And really, if you think about the best neighborhoods in our country, they've happened over a long period of time. We have one of them right here in Milwaukee, the 3rd Ward. The 3rd Ward is one of the 10 best urban neighborhoods in the country. It didn't happen overnight. It involves existing historic structures. It involves new construction, which we have all that right here. So my point being that we have an opportunity here. We can't mess this up. We have to do it right. But we have an opportunity to really change this part of Milwaukee and connect it to the rest of our great city. So as far as what these renderings are showing, and exactly what these buildings are, we can talk about that, at least some of the possible uses here. But in the end, the market's going to really drive a lot of this development that's going to happen around the arena. We know we want people have to be able to live here and work here, nighttime, daytime activities. So that's that graphic. The next one, of course, you've seen is more of an aerial shot of the arena proper. And we'll probably get into, if there's questions about the design itself and how it really applies to our city. But there's been a lot of talk about the live blocks. You've heard about that, and creating this experience for the fans, expanding the demographic of the fan, and creating an experience that starts way before entering the doors of the arena itself. And then the last slide, of course, is from that live block looking back at the arena and shows more of what potentially the arena could look like architecturally. So with that, I think we'll get right into it, I hope. Okay.
Very good. And I'm going to stick with you, Greg, for 1 minute, just from the architecture standpoint. As you look at the designs, you could say it has a bit of a futuristic look to it. But when you look at the traditions of Milwaukee, from an architecture standpoint, how do you blend the old and the new in an exciting new project like this?
Well, that's a good question. And we did talk about this quite a bit as a design team. And what we came up with was, how do we create an authentic building and structure that really fits in our city? And the first thing that I would submit to you is that Milwaukee has such great authentic architecture already. For us to try to copy that in some way would, of course, be disingenuous. And so it was our thought that we should respect the past by building something and creating something that really looks to the future. Now, having said that, Milwaukee does have distinctive characteristics that we want to maintain that our city is known for. And I'll just give you one of those things, and it's something I would call a crafted scale to our architecture. Our city is not full of high-rise, heavy glass gleaming buildings. It's smaller in scale, but there's a crafted scale to the architecture and to the street experience. Even the new architecture, the Calatrava is a beautiful modern structure, but it's very well crafted. And so the arena poses some challenges with its scale, but as long as we can maintain some of those aspects of Milwaukee's architecture and weave it into this historic area, I think it can work quite well.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'm going to kind of jump around to some of the other panelists and ask one or two questions of each of them before we open it up. But I want to start at the end with Beth Wierick, from Milwaukee Downtown, the Downtown Management District. Beth, obviously you're an expert in downtown development and are on the International Downtown Association Board and see what great downtowns are doing across the world. So when you look at this project and how it can truly impact the heart of this great city, what are your general thoughts? And then how does it kind of play into the existing fabric of what downtown already has to offer?
I know you can't help but call me Nichols.
No, I know, I'm sorry.
Well, when I see the proposed project, I can't help but be reflective of what got us to this point. And I might be a little bit older than some of you out in the audience, because I remember back when former Mayor John Norquist was making the case for the deconstruction of the Park East Freeway. How many of you remember that? Oh, okay. All right, so that happened in 2003. And so the area that Greg referenced earlier up on the screen, at that point in time, it was called the McKinley Avenue District. And the proposal in 2003 under the Park East Freeway Development Plan was for entertainment, commercial, and office. And it was to be a district that worked with the scale of our city streets and that would connect to the brewery, Haymarket Square, West Wisconsin Avenue, and the river. So in context, I don't know how much Greg read that plan just to refresh himself, but it clearly is evidence that when you have a longtime dreamer or a visionary, like former Mayor Norquist, those plans eventually do come to fruition. So we're seeing that here with these conceptual plans today. So what does it mean for downtown in terms of economic investment? It means more than economic investment to me, because to me it's about building a community. We know how places, entertainment venues, arts, culture, things to do, connect people to a community. That's what keeps people here. So from that broad perspective, I see it as a new rally cry for Milwaukeeans. Not only will the arena and the new live block bring investment, it's going to make Milwaukee a gotta-get-to city. It's going to create jobs and long-term jobs. It's going to add to our tax base. It's going to make us an attractive city where people are going to want to work and live and play. And it's going to bring us income tax. It's going to bring us recognition. And I see it as a really phenomenal opportunity for, once again, this community to rally and really make it big and make it bold. And let's be innovative and let's get this project going.
All right. And what are you hearing from your members and constituents, the bars, the clubs, the restaurants, the downtown businesses who already have a strong foothold in this downtown area? Downtown Dining Week coming up. You have 46 restaurants that are part of Downtown Dining Week. And now we're going to add even more with a kind of a rise and tides lifts all boats mentality. And what are you hearing from them in terms of the excitement of the project?
Well, overall, everybody is very excited. I think, in general, the bar and restaurant and arts and cultural community is excited because our leadership understands the nighttime economy is really important and vital in the future of Milwaukee. That nighttime economy provides an attractive resort and asset for young professionals who want to call Milwaukee home. So they recognize anything that enhances our nighttime economy to make Milwaukee more attractive, to retain the workforce that's in this room, will also attract employers, will retain employers. So with that, most of the stakeholders understand that this is a really critical development. Now, with that being said, let's be honest here. I think there's a question out there about, the local financing and the local funding and how that's going to impact them as we move forward with developing this district and how we're going to pay for that and what the return is going to be. So I think critically in the end, they are very supportive, but our other hospitality zones want to be certain that we're thoughtful in our approach about building this district and that we're thoughtful about connecting those nodes to all these other hospitality zones and neighborhoods within our city. But overall, people are saying, let's get this thing done.
All right, very good. I am going to move on to Gary Grunow right next to you. Gary Grunow, developer, Schlitz Park, and many other things around town. Gary, in many ways, you're kind of the seasoned young professional in the room. You've seen a lot in your Milwaukee life, developed
seasoned
a lot.
Old professional.
Yes. Seen a lot come and go. Some good, some not so good. How does the decision to build this arena where it is kind of fall into the scheme of huge developments in the Milwaukee context?
I'll answer the question, but I want to prelude it by giving you just a little bit of background. There used to be a TV show, what was called, I think, You Are There. Well, I was there when the freeway came down, and what caused that freeway to come down in the early 90s, we had purchased the old Schlitzbury in 1983, and we saw how it was such a concrete racial barrier to this community that no one would go underneath it to the north side, and the city was tremendously divided. And we fought for a long time to get that freeway down, the bridge down over King Drive on the east side and the west side. One project caused that to happen. Some people know about it, it's been in the paper, but Harley Davidson committed to us to build their museum up at Schlitz in the old brew house. And we worked with them for a year, or 2 years to get it done, but one of the requirements that they made was that freeway come down. So on a Friday morning, right before the Super Bowl in Miami, whatever year it was, we all bundled in a car, the president of Harley, myself, it was at the time I think it was Jeff Bluestein, and we went out and saw Tommy Thompson. And the point I'm going to make here is we had a divided government. We had a governor over here, a legislature over here, a county executive over here. Like suburbs, didn't like cars, that wanted to take the freeway down. An impossible situation to get it done. What happened? We were there Friday, and by Wednesday of the next week, because of this development, all those bodies came together, and they decided they were going to take the freeway down. We have that same opportunity here with the arena, and you think it was divided politically back in those days. Look where it is today. I mean, we got a state legislature, a county executive, a mayor, and a governor that aren't exactly in the same rowboat together trying to go up the river. But hopefully they'll realize that this project, to your point, Greg, will knit together further the north side and the south side. You look at the Haymarket Square area, which is a nascent third ward right now. Drive through there some days. They're historic buildings, buildings that are crying for development, that'll springboard up to Walnut, and eventually up to North Avenue. You got Sojourner Truth House on 6th right now in Walnut, and other projects happening. So I think that more so than even on downtown and the neighborhood where it's going to be great, this will finish off the growth and the connectivity of our city, north side, northwest side, and downtown. I think it's very important. Now, what was the question? Somebody asked me
about the politics of the project.
If you're on a panel, you don't listen to questions. You just tell them what they want to tell them. Go ahead. What was the question? Or the other one?
You answered it perfectly. I'm going to go to the politics of the project. You talked about the politics of the freeway project, and how do we work to get this to the finish line? I know you have some good thoughts along those lines.
Well, you read all these polls and the various statistics about them, and there was a guy that was a national forecaster at one time that said, I'm going to give you an interesting statistics, and that's that 87% of all statistics are made up. Now just think about that. And that's true. You can get statistics that tell you whatever you want to do to make your case. I hope that this project will cause the mayor, the governor, the state legislature, the county executive to put aside the political call them differences. Because think about it, they're even wider than they were back in 2000 right now. People have made promises to their constituencies they're just not going to do something. That wasn't out there in 2000, but these guys are pretty much in a box right now by what they've done. But if they think enough about the future of this community and the effect that this thing could have, and everybody gives a little bit, it doesn't take a lot. It's a very simple equation. The state has the money, but it's got to be supported from something here locally. And the people that are going to support it here locally, which are the city and the county, have to rely on the growth of this area and the economic development that's going to happen. That's how we sold the streetcar project. Talk about connectivity. That thing's going to come right up 4th Street and up King Drive, up to North Avenue. If this project goes ahead, that has to be there as the linchpin to propel the streetcar up there. It's another connectivity issue. But if they would all think about the simple equation of the state with the money, the city with the TIF ability, and the city with the confidence that economic development is going to happen. As a developer in this city, if you go in and you ask for a TIF, you have to sign what's known as a developer agreement, which means you're going to guarantee that you're going to develop something or you're going to underwrite the taxes that project would have paid. Well, the Bucks owners are bringing $250 million, along with, including the senator's contribution here, and they're in a position that there is going to be ancillary type development, but right now they're concentrating on the arena. But I am sure when this thing happens, there will be so much development around it that could easily support a TIF that would support the city and in some ways the county's contribution. Because you got to remember, when the TIF is set aside, that means half the taxes aren't going, or part of the taxes aren't going directly to the city, but an equal part of the taxes aren't going to the county. And they also go to MPS and they go to everybody else. So everybody in a TIF is contributing, all the governmental agencies, to something like that. So hopefully they can balance out the equation of how much of a TIF would go in, how much the money is that'll go in to service the debt, et cetera, and get this thing done. It just has to be done. And you don't need anything radical. You don't need two taxes or a tax on this or a brand new tax over there. It's in place. It's very easy to do. They just got to get their political differences aside, get in a room, and get it done.
All right. Very good. Very good. Thank you, Gary. I'm going to move on to Robin Reese from the Vanguard Group, a native Milwaukeean real estate developer. Just in terms of the impact of the project and your developments that you're working on, Robin, what were your thoughts when you first heard of the project? And then I always like to ask, if you kind of had a magic Milwaukee wand and you could make one or two wishes to make downtown Milwaukee your best downtown into this box of this project, what would those two wishes be?
Wow, I get a magic wand
yes.
today. Okay, first, before I answer this question, somebody's glasses are on the floor. Okay, and that's been bothering me because I feel that somebody's going to step on them. So, okay. Well, as a native Milwaukeean, and not only a native to Milwaukee, but actually this area and this neighborhood, I was born and raised, and so was my dad and my mom, less than a mile away from here, more like a half a mile, and still currently live this close. So Beth and Gary brought up history, so I guess before I proceed to answer my question, my thoughts on the new development immediately took me to Bronzeville because I grew up hearing stories of the wonderful Bronzeville area that my family was involved in and all the entertainment and all the businesses, and it was just a thriving time. And when my family, where they lived, is in Mayflower Court, which is on 6th, 7th, and Walnut, and that was built in 1963. Well, the freeway was built in 1966, and that essentially destroyed what was known as Bronzeville by splitting it. Houses were torn down, businesses were torn down, and those that weren't ended up shutting down because the people just weren't there to support it. So fast forward to what Gary and Beth spoke of, fast forward some years to the freeway or the Park East Spur coming down that took down the divide, but there's still a divide because there's a void of business. There's still nothing that's connecting these neighborhoods to downtown. So for me, it's really exciting that one, that you'll do development here, but the potential that it will go into the new Bronzeville and will not only attract businesses and people to live here, but also to bring more businesses and people into a new neighborhood district. So with regards to Vanguard and our developments, we're definitely excited to see more development here because that means it'll be more success for our development. So, for example, the Germania building that we have, the Posner building, which is not a Vanguard development, but still we're excited to see those things happen because they will definitely they will attract people to downtown. So our development will be a housing development, but people want to live where there's restaurants, where there's shopping, where there's entertainment. So it will definitely support us. As far as my magic wand, we keep talking about retail, and we're talking about the new arena and this whole area over here, but for me, what I want to talk about is the Grand Avenue Mall. And if I had a magic wand, while we do need, and I'm sure we'll see retail in this new development, if we do too much, we're going to further kill the mall. So I'm hoping that we will get the Grand Avenue Mall as it was when it opened. I don't know if you remember, but it was anchored by Marshall Fields on one end, and you had Boston Store, then you had Gimbel's across the street, and you had Woolworth. So I'm hoping that we will get some major retailers, activate the mall on the street, kind of similar to how Bayshore is, and not so much that you have to be in the mall structure, but so that people can walk down the street and go shopping and go eat and come enjoy the wonderful arena entertainment complex and go home to the Germania building.
Very, very nice. Right across from my condo at the Cocker building. We're neighbors. We're going to move on to Corey Nettles. Corey from Generation Growth Capital, also an investor, one of the minority investors in the team. I want to talk, Corey, a little bit about your decision to invest in the team and that stakeholder that you have and the community connection you have there. Then, from a team standpoint, talk a little bit about maybe the difference and the comparisons between this project, Miller Park, and Lambeau, and just kind of provide some context.
Yeah, so in terms of my own, I don't know if this is on. So in terms of my own involvement, you know, like others here, I am a Milwaukee native. I always say a native son. I love this community. I was one of the kids who grew up here, and if you were a young black boy growing up in Milwaukee of any promise, everyone told you to leave and don't ever look back. And a lot of my friends did, quite candidly. But for some reason, I, by God's grace, stayed. And I believe if you're going to stay, then you have an obligation to get involved to make that community better. And I think this community has some absolutely phenomenal assets, natural assets, cultural assets, physical assets, and human assets. But I think they're all underutilized, underleveraged, undercapitalized right now. And part of the reason I decided to get involved as an investor is I really wanted to be a part of something great that gave us a chance as a community to move toward that place of greatness, to not be that New York Times story written back in the 1960s that talked about Milwaukee looking fondly back in the 1920s, 100 years ago. And we have so few opportunities in a community of our size to do projects of significant scale. And I can't think of another time in my lifetime when anybody was talking about $1 billion investment in our city. And I said, if I can do anything to help bring that to fruition to give our city a shot at being a Tier 1 great city where we can be positive about raising our families and our nieces and our nephews and living, working, and playing. If I could do anything as an investor to help support that, I thought it was my obligation to do that as a person who has benefited mightily from all that this community's had to offer. And when I think about, to your second question, I guess, the opportunity here, I get that there needs to be, as Beth was alluding to, a very healthy, spirited conversation about the investment of public dollars. Some of you know that I used to be Commerce Secretary for the state of Wisconsin. So I get this public incentive, public investment thing really, really, really well. But I also understand that markets need support where they are inefficient or where they are dysfunctional. And the trick when you're a policymaker is to figure out how much incentive is enough to kind of push the market over that little hump so that the rest of the market will begin to kick in and take over. What's been proposed here is a $250 million public investment against what would be a $1 billion private investment. Now, I'm in the investment business now. We call that leverage. And if I can get 4-to-1 leverage on my capital, that's a pretty good ratio. And if you look across the country and other markets of a similar size, there's a directly correlated ratio. Smaller the market, the greater the public subsidy. Smaller the market, the greater the public subsidy. On just the arena piece, the $500 million arena piece, we've said to our public partners, let's go 50-50. We'll put up $250, and that's been committed, as you heard Gary allude to earlier, and we want our public partners to come to the table and put up the other $250. That's a 50% partnership. If you look across the country for similar projects, that public subsidy is more like 75% on average, and sometimes 90 to 95% is not unheard of. So 50-50 compared to the national model of public-private partnership is a pretty good number. But we don't have to go all across the country to Sacramento and other places, Cleveland, to see what that looks like. We can look here in the state of Wisconsin. With Miller Park, for example, that was a $395 million project. Private dollars in that $395 million project were 90, right? So 25% roughly of that total cost was private, 75% of public. Second to God in Wisconsin is what? The Packers. Lambeau Field, approaching 60% public subsidy. So if you look at the range of what's being proposed here, from my perspective as a former Commerce Secretary doing community and economic development, looking across the country at what other communities have done in the public-private partnership, looking in our own market with the Miller Park and Lambeau, I think the 50-50 number just on the arena is an extremely reasonable proposition. And then if you look at the billion-dollar investment compared to the 250, that kind of leverage gets to be really, really compelling. Keep in mind that the flip side of this is not only what you gain, it's what you stand to lose. Beth alluded to this. I want to live in a community that has arts and culture and that's activated. And NBA franchises are a scarce commodity. And the NBA has been very clear that if the ownership group doesn't get an arena built by 2017, this arena, this franchise, this team that went from almost worst to what feels to me like first in a year will be gone. And that's not an idle threat. The NBA's got a business model, and this is an underperforming business based upon our physical plan. So we would lose the team, all of the income, all of the jobs that go with that, and the income taxes that we lose over a period of 30 years or so is about $730 million, give or take. That's what we would stand to lose. Add on top of that the jobs. And then those numbers start to get pretty significant and I would argue pretty compelling. So in addition to the quality of life, we really start to lose significantly economically. So I think this is a generational, transformational opportunity to do something that not just benefits the arena. That's secondary in the grand. That's the catalytic hub. But what's really exciting, as was shown, is how this spokes out into our broader extended community and across our state, and we ought to be compelled by that. I certainly am personally compelled by that opportunity and that vision, and I hope that the community will become as well.
Your prediction for Game 6?
We're going to win.
All right, there we go.
We're going to win by 5.
All right, very good. I'm gonna do a few more questions for the panelists, and I'm sure you guys all have questions, and we have some mics set up too, so I will let you get your questions answered in just a couple minutes. I want to go back to Greg for a little bit. Could you talk about other similar cities, projects that you really like? Maybe a couple that you don't like as much, and everything that goes into a project like this, and how Milwaukee can truly make it special.
Sure. There's well, I guess there's a couple things in that question. There are other arenas that we certainly like, and aspects of those new fan experiences, and then there are districts that we've also looked at and have some of the team members have been involved in. So maybe district first. And there's been, quite frankly, I think, some mixed results in some of this. And in fact, it makes my point that I made earlier. Kansas City has the Gaslight District that's near the Sprint Center. Is it Sprint? Mm-hmm. Yeah, did I say that right? And it's really done quite well architecturally. But it does have, it's focused purely, I shouldn't say purely, but there's a lot of entertainment uses, but there's not a lot of residential in the area. And so, without having people live there, it gets quite quiet in the daytime. And I think that we'd want to avoid doing that. I think we want to, again, I have a theme here, but wanting to populate this day and night. That's important. Columbus has also done something. They have an NHL hockey team there, and they've also created an entertainment district that's, I think, a little bit more successful in terms of its residential and office use, and it's more populated. But I haven't been to that one, so I can't speak directly to it. As far as the arenas, I mean, we're seeing all sorts of very exciting things, and of course, my team member, Populous, they are very experienced in doing arena design, so I'm learning quite a bit from them. But suffice to say that we can't wait for the day that we can begin to show some of the design work that's happening inside the arena, because that's really, quite frankly, I think where it's going to get really exciting in terms of different ways for fans to experience the game of basketball, to relate to the players and to the notion of what's happening inside the facility. Quite exciting. It would be quite different than what you currently experience.
Can you talk a little bit more about that, just in terms of the inside?
Come on,
it's
man.
A follow-up question.
Yeah. It's I guess there's a couple things. And I don't know how deep you want to go, but there's a lot of suites at the Bradley Center, and suites are great, but they take up a lot of room. They tend to divide the bowl, and so we're looking at the numbers of suites that might be located in this new arena and getting more fans closer to the game, and having some spaces for the average fan, so to speak, to experience the game in ways that they maybe can't today. So I don't know if that's enough for you, but
a more open, connected experience.
Open and connected experience would be a good way to put it. So thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Greg.
I'll stop
now. Back to Beth for a little bit. Can you discuss some of the major downtown trends that you're seeing in other markets and how they play into a project like this?
Well, whenever we look at just global trends in general, I mean, we see this attraction back to urban centers, right? And as part of that attraction back to urban centers, I think it goes back to those things that we were talking about earlier, and that's connection to the community. It's walkable streets, it's sustainable buildings, it's adaptive reuse, it's valuing the assets of our natural our natural environment, our lakes, our rivers. Those are great, phenomenal assets, and Milwaukee has those. It's really honoring our historic buildings, but also being forward-thinking and innovative with new construction and new innovative approaches in design. it's really creating neighborhoods. I mean, I think we think of central business districts so much differently than we did even 10 years ago. It is living, working, and playing, and it is really not needing a car. It is using mass transit. It's connectivity. It's quality of life. It's community engagement. And so when I look at trends of cities that people are choosing, it's cities that have all of those assets. And Milwaukee is that product. And to Corey's point, it's time for us. We've got a generational opportunity to be really big picture, forward thinking, in taking a large swath of land that was essentially dropped in our laps as a gift with this blank canvas to be able to build a district, a neighborhood that every one of our competitive peer cities is going to be envious of.
Great, great. I have one more question for Gary, and then we'll open it up. We have about 10, 15 minutes, so we'll wrap it up with your questions. Gary, when you look at a transformative project like this and other possible marquee tenants, yes, it's an arena for sports and entertainment and music and culture and retail, but are there other civic assets that could be a part of this project? A museum, a recreation center, educational components? What would you see in the community?
You know, this is a big project to get the arena built, and there's going to be other things that do appear on the scene, I think. But you have to remember the assets that are there right now, that we've got the technical college right across the street, where there's 35,000 students, I think, or something, Jeff, in all their campuses, that need some work and has to expand. So a partnership there. For instance, they need housing. They've been trying to build dorms. They've been trying to do other things where they can establish themselves as kind of a residential college, like a lot of technical / or junior colleges you see in the United States. MATC is a great asset for this community. There's a strong partnership there that can be developed. I think, to Greg's comments, there's a need for housing. I was in Kansas City 3 weeks ago, and Kansas City is going to start their streetcar up this fall. And right along that streetcar line, there's about 6 housing projects and 3 hotels that have now cropped up that are being built right in the area. And right in the middle of that is the Sprint Center and the Gaslight District, which this one out here follows a lot. It's got that plexiglass roof. You can stand outside and watch football games when it's 20 degrees or 10 degrees. There's heaters underneath them. It's a community square. And that community square has to involve a lot of things. You go to Portland, you've got the students are in the community square. You go to, you got students across the street. You got MSOE. You got also Marquette that are close by. The streetcar will help the portability of those kids and those students getting around. So, that's going to happen. I know there are other people, institutions. I think the Milwaukee Public Museum has a big question they have to face very soon. Do they stay where they are, or do they go out and they look, for an outside site somewhere? People have talked about them on the lakefront, down where the Betty Bryn is, and right outside of Discovery World, next to Summerfest. They could be up here, they could be there, etc. But that's about the only public museum, I think, that you might see Jeff enter into the mix, and it's a worthy place for him. But to Beth's comments, you need a mixture. And I agree that Kansas City, we were there during the day, it's cold and dry, because it's under the roof, but they also produce close to 4 million visitors in that area a year, either going to the Sprint Center or to this community center. The Bradley Center has done a tremendous job. I see Steve Costello over there who runs this place. And if you think of the people they bring through here, then you add these other people that are going to be there, and plus there'll be probably more national programs and everything going on in the new area. It is a generator for people, and where people will be, businesses will follow, residences will follow, and everything else like that, Jeff.
Very good. Thank you, Gary. All right. I want to open it up for questions. You can step up to the mic. Just give your name, where you're from, and we can address them to a specific individual, or if you want to address it to the group, that's fine as well.
Bruce Westling, based in downtown with MLG Commercial, and the question really goes across the board, but for those non-basketball fans, for those who think, it's an arena, this or that, Gary, your investment going back to 1983 with Schlitz Park and other areas in this part of downtown. Greg, your business has grown just tremendously and been active in downtown. What happens if it doesn't happen? Give us a feel from your perspective, and Beth, what if this doesn't happen? Where do you see Milwaukee going in the next 3 to 5 years? The Bucks leave. You've already talked about this area already being pretty much, there's no people. You've got restaurants and business owners. What kind of a ripple effect would you imagine of something like that if this actually didn't happen?
Well, let's just say that doesn't happen. But hypothetically, I think whenever a community misses out on a generational opportunity like this, the signal it sends to the rest of the world, to the universe, about what kind of a city we are is not necessarily a very good one, right? I mean, what I love about this Bucks ownership and the investors, candidly, being born and raised in Milwaukee myself, and I'm talking the city proper, MPS grad here, is they believe in Milwaukee more than some Milwaukeeans do, which kind of breaks my heart. So what does that look like? It looks like a really huge missed opportunity. It looks like a swath of land that we're wondering what's going to happen to. And how in the world are we going to attract this kind of development if we miss out on this opportunity? I think we've got to grab it and go.
Probably something else that I think that'll happen is it could be through the failure of the politicians right now to get it done. And if the politicians fail, I think people really have to look at who's protecting the people's interest. The entertainment and the hospitality interest is the biggest provider of jobs for entry-level people. People can come in with basically no skills, and they're trained and they're work up in the management very quickly. I was in the hotel business for a while, and I can attest to that. The same thing with a place like this, the same thing with restaurants. We would hurt every part of our economy if these jobs were lost to our community. I haven't seen any projections, and either Greg or Corey, they're probably out there, of how many jobs this place will create and how many jobs will be created in restaurants and everything around them. But it's immense, and those are our citizens who need jobs. So it just has to happen, or we're not going to vote for anybody who's going to be running for re-election, okay?
Sorry, I feel really compelled to piggyback on that. You know what, Milwaukee, we provide great hospitality, don't we? We know how to eat, we love our music, we love to celebrate. And Gary, to your point, there is leadership who sees Milwaukee as a great hospitality destination. So let's use that. Milwaukee Area Workforce Investment Board is looking at creating job programs to put people to work in the entertainment industry. That's the truth. That's happening right now. Talk to Earl Buford about it. The mayor had a vision with Maywib. It's going to happen. We're going to feed people into the hospitality sector. We are going to get this district built, and we are going to show America and the world that the best place to have fun and be served in a great hospitality environment is right here in the city of Milwaukee, and we're getting ready for it.
To Gary's point about the jobs, the study that we commissioned said conservatively that the number's 10,000. When Sacramento had their study done about jobs created related to the arena, their number is 11,000, and that doesn't begin to count the ancillary development.
And a lot of those are entry-level jobs, remember that.
Which is key.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Thornton. I work for MPS, Milwaukee Recreation, and I hear how you say MATC will benefit supposedly Marquette would benefit and other organizations. How would MPS benefit from this new entertainment district? And if there's a way.
Jobs, jobs, jobs.
Yes, I mean that's the answer. Is that if we don't have jobs that our students coming out of NPS can begin as entry level as they're developing and growing their skill. I mean, parts of the African American community have unemployment rates of upwards of 50%. Upwards of 50%. And when I think about the area just north of the arena, and I played over in that public project and the Boys and Girls Club there, you know, we got to create jobs in proximity to people who are living in these communities, and that's going to be our NPS grads. I'd love NPS grads to be everything from greeters at the door to the CFO in the office of the Bucks. But we've got to create enterprises of a scale that give them opportunity to develop their skill. The other piece of this, you know, with my MBE hat on, is if you start talking about this kind of public subsidy, not only do you get the jobs, but we've already begun the conversation about what does MBE and DBE and WBE and RPP look like, right? So if we start talking about most of the major projects that have happened in this community have had, as a general rule, about 25% MBE, minority business enterprise participation, right? So you start talking about $1 billion that gets invested, and you take 25% of that and start having that as an MBE goal. Now, every study that's been done, and most nationally prominent by the Kauffman Foundation, says that MBEs disproportionately hire who? The M's, you know, minorities, right? So if I can create opportunity to deploy capital that gets to minority businesses who hire minority people, you can start to get this flywheel effect. And then I can start talking about how do we bring down that 50% unemployment rate in our community that is in Hillside and that's out in neighborhoods on 27th and North Avenue and et cetera. So I don't think just MPS, which we've got to be very concerned about in terms of the education and the development of our people's skills, but we have a whole community out there who need jobs and opportunities, and this can be a piece. I'm not saying this is the panacea by any means. This can be a piece of that puzzle.
One more question? Huh?
I guess probably to Gary. Tom Rademacher, Remax Realtors. Was the Journal a primary site? And I'd be real curious how those discussions went. It seemed like in the paper that discussions went on for a while, and then they decided not to sell. And I ask it from the perspective that, you know, I worked for a Journal from when I was 12 to 23, and then for 5 years in the 1970s, I was on the third floor there, and I know how many people were in that building, and I don't know how many are in that building now, but it's a, you know, complete shell of what it was. So I was thinking, oh yeah, if I was a Journal, if I got a fair offer, I'd sell. And so I guess any disappointment in not getting that site, and how did those discussions go?
To be honest with you, I'm not privy to any of those discussions, but I've always thought, and I think I remarked early, that sooner or later people are going to build this arena in the easiest place to build it and where it's least costly to build it, and there wouldn't be a lot of environmental problems. I don't know if there are anybody there, or some type of remedial problems, or if the price of the land wasn't extraordinary. And I would think that all of that probably entered into the deliberations, because I know from where I've seen it there was extensive discussions, but they eventually just decided to move. But I can't tell you the reasons why. I'm not privy to it. I'm sorry. Okay. I'll tell you, these guys are great, by the way. They're a tenant of ours. Back to Corey's thing, I see them from kind of another way. They are so involved in the community, and they want this community to do better. And that's from Peter Fagan to the owners to their people in their offices. They are so exciting to be around. They lift up your spirit, and this team and what they're going to do here is going to lift up the spirit of this community, which we all need. Continue.
I guess I can just respond briefly on that in maybe a slightly different way, and that is relative to the design. We did look at the Journal site, and it had some issues. There was a lot of things we liked about the site. Its proximity to the river, and of course a little bit closer to downtown. and we really thought it was a great site. But it was a tight site, and in hindsight, looking back at it, we've all agreed, we've talked about this many times, that this site is much better for the city in a lot of ways. It would have been, let me put it this way, that site is very developable as it is, especially once the arena goes in there. You know, there's a lot of uses that could happen there that might not otherwise happen on the site we're talking about north of this current building. So it allows us to do a bigger vision. There's no comparison in terms of the acreage. That site was maybe a total of 5 acres total by the time you close some streets and do some other things that you don't really want to do to get the arena to fit, versus 24 acres. So it immediately changes the whole paradigm of what this can be by going to this site.
Okay, thank you. All right, one final question, and then we'll wrap it up.
I'm a ringer. I'm with the Journal Sentinel since that came up, but I wanted to ask the architect on this. I think the more important question is, we're standing in an arena that's a teardown after 25 years. You're proposing to build an arena as a centerpiece for $1 billion of construction. Will that be a 50-year arena, or are you building a 25-year arena? And will you be able to remodel it?
I appreciate the question. I'll try to answer. I'm not. Let me just try to answer it a couple ways. So, first of all, it's a very common question, and I agree with you. How could you possibly tear down a building like this? It's got to have value. I'm not an expert personally in arenas, but this particular arena is rated the lowest of all 30
It's the second oldest in the NBA.
of all the NBA arenas. Having said that, there's times have changed quite a bit. Arenas are very, very different today, and times have changed in Milwaukee. This is my personal view. When the Bradley Center was built, it was probably considered state of the art. I'm sure it was. It was built primarily for hockey, and it has basketball in it. But back then, people didn't live downtown as much as they do today. We have a much different we have a different canvas today of what we can do with a new arena. So once you get beyond the argument of, are you really going to tear this down? And I know it's difficult to get past that, but once you get past that, you say, okay, now let's look at Milwaukee today and in the future, what a new arena, and then of course the district around it can really do to change what we have today. Because people...
You're not answering the question. Are you going to build an arena that will be good for 20 years?
Okay. The question...
Regardless of this arena is irrelevant. Are you going to build an arena that will be a teardown in 25 years, or one that you can restore and make it a 50-year arena?
Right. We certainly want to build an arena that lasts a lifetime. And in terms of how many years, I mean, the NBA is very involved in the design of this new building, and there's a lot of guidelines that we follow. And so, I mean, to answer your question directly, how many years? I guess I'm going to ask one of the owners here what his view is. But you're talking about a 50-year building, I'm sure, and beyond, not a 15-year building.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's certainly the hope. We have some iconic buildings down on the lake that I look at. Take Northwestern Mutual and how old that building is, right? They ain't building them like that anymore. It's hard to project out the useful life of a building into those kinds of years, but certainly as a hub of a community, Greg talked about, the third ward. We'd like this to be a cornerstone in a community that will be here, for 50 or 100 years. And we would hope that there would be adaptive reuses for this building over the course of that trajectory. I suspect that people having these kinds of conversations 30 years ago thought that would be the case with this building. And I think by most market standards, it's beyond its useful life and would be very inefficient to adapt this particular building as a modern day arena. There is $100 to $120 million in deferred maintenance necessary for this building as we sit in it today. It'd be hard, given the demands of the marketplace and current NBA business model, to adapt this building efficiently. So we hope that we can create an arena that will be here for 50 years or more. We'll see how smart we are, and our grandchildren's grandchildren will be able to look back and judge the wisdom of that. But this isn't intended to be a 25 and done proposition.
It should also just be noted that the NBA has made that decision for us, in that they have said basically the Bucks can no longer play in this structure, and so is. Thank you.
All right, very good.
Jeff, if I could just comment just to finish that. I don't think it's a case of this place falling down. I don't think you'll find an arena that's built as well as this building's built. The way it was built and the purpose it was built for, it's not adaptable at all, to answer your question. Where the new ones aren't going to change in the bowl or things like that, but the way that sports are communicated to the world now is a lot different than it was 20 years ago, when people came to the game to watch. And this, again, was originally constructed as a hockey arena. You have to remember that.
And Lambeau's a good example of adaptive reuse. And look at how Lambeau's been changed since it was built.
All right, very good. We said we're going to go to about 7:30. It's 7:33, so I didn't do too bad as a moderator. I want to wrap it up with a quote that I'd like to close these type of events with. First and foremost, the passion, the experience, and the knowledge from everyone on the panel is to be admired. One thing I love about Fuel Milwaukee events, it helps you get off the sidelines and get involved. So if you're passionate around this cause or others, call people, call your elected officials, and get involved in Milwaukee. And that's what everyone is here. So a big round of applause for everyone. Because sometimes in Milwaukee, for whatever reason, I go back to John Johnson, Marine Bank executive from 1872. You read the Making Milwaukee book. This is what John Johnson said about Milwaukee and Wisconsin in 1872. You're going to like this. It's pretty cool. And it's something I think we can all take to heart, especially with a huge project like this. John Johnson said, there's one thing that we're deficient in here. We neither have the necessary blow nor brag. Not only have we not that, but we see daily men and women standing with their hands in their pockets, whining about Milwaukee being a one-horse town and such the talk. Such men and women are not worthy to live here. Milwaukee is not Chicago, but few cities are like Chicago. Milwaukee has grown at a rate surpassed by a very limited number of cities in the whole union. Instead of grumbling and whining, let us have some city pride. Let us have some esprit de corps. Let us not listen to any citizen of Milwaukee trying to make us believe that he has traveled and seen great cities by crying down this, the handsomeness and the healthiest and happiest city in the Midwest. Let us cultivate the talent of brag. Whether at home or abroad, let us boast Milwaukee and Wisconsin, her beauty, her order, her growing trade, her commerce, and her manufacturers. Let's go Bucks on Milwaukee.